CN shareholders gathering in Toronto for the company's annual general meeting. Harsh winter weather has prompted the rail company to cut its profit outlook this year. But the country's largest railroad is spending about $400 million to upgrade its tracks, and they may buy hundreds of new rail cars. Jameson Berkow caught up with the interim CEO, Jean-Jacques Ruest. He tells us many of those investments could in fact have been made earlier.
When we revised our guidance in April of last year, we increased our guidance on EPS growth and especially volume growth. At that time, in hindsight, we should have probably triggered some of these capital investment that we're doing this year that would be very helpful for the fourth quarter, but even more helpful for the winter. So in hindsight, the capital we're deploying this year, some of that should have been deployed last year. And the reason for that is, you look at the mix of business, the business has been much more concentrated in the West, not so much in the East, not so much in Ontario and Quebec or the US. We look at the prairies business and the port business and all our natural resource activities. That has actually been booming, and that up to a point got us to caught us by surprise.
So to deal with the next winter in 2019, so you want to be in fighting shape for it. That's what a lot of these investments are for. What happens though if winter 2019 is even harsher than winter 2018? Yeah,
so we'll be in much better shape because we're going to have much more locomotive. We've leased 130. We can return these locomotives as a new locomotive come in, but we can also keep them. We have leasing agreement allow us flexibility to return them in 6 months or only in 24 months. So we're going to enter the winter with what we need in terms of locomotives. Same thing on people. We're hiring a lot of recruiting and hiring and train crews. And every month we got new people graduating and becoming trained to run train, and that's very key to create capacity. And the third thing that we mentioned is the track capacity, adding sidings, adding section of double track. So our main line is a single track. To put more train on that main line, you need places for train to meet. So the more places we add to meet train, we can put more train on the grid, and that will put us in good shape for the winter of 2019.
So Bill Gates is now your largest shareholder. Have you spoken to him since you've taken the CEO role?
It's Cascade Investment. So obviously we talked to all our shareholders, including his investment in CN. And we're going to keep doing the best we can to make sure that he remains good long-term investors in CN.
Is he pleased with the strategy that's being laid out?
Yeah, so I think he's pleased with the strategy. What there is right now in the other one is a call bill C-49 that would allow any single shareholders to eventually exceed the 15% maximum there is right now to bring it up to 25%. And any shareholders, including Bill Gates Foundation, will then have the ability to raise their investment in CN over time.
Have you heard any concern, though, about you don't expect the real benefit of the investments you're making right now to start showing up until the fourth quarter? What kind of feedback have you gotten about that bit of a delayed reaction?
So if I may correct that, we already start to see some benefit of the locomotive and the crews. The benefit of the track would only come in as these sidings and track construction start to become in operation. So most of the track work being in the spring and the summer, most of the benefit will start to be late summer and early fall. But in the meantime, we are getting the benefit of, first, the winter is over, and two, we have more train crews than we ever had, and we have more locomotives. So you need these different pillars. Only the last pillar is coming in toward the end of the summer and the fall.
So just a couple more quick questions, if you don't mind. One about the idea of crude-by-rail shipments. I know right now it's a relatively small portion of the goods that you ship, but given the debate around all the pipelines, without getting into the pipeline debate itself, how much more do you think CN could actually ship as far as crude oil goes?
So the rail is not a substitute to pipeline. We could be a complement. And it could be a complement to the pipeline industry to the extent that we have some capacity available. So our first focus is potash, grain, coal, forest product, the regular business that can be put in a pipeline. And as we add capacity, we will have more likely some more capacity in the second half in 2019 to do more crude by rail. In fact, we have signed contract to do more crude by rail in the latter parts of this year and early next year.
How much more, do you have a sense?
I don't want to go into the detail, but we will be moving more crude. And the extent that we can help the crude industry will depend on how much residual capacity we have left for 2019 after all the construction I just talked about earlier.
And your chief rival, CP, is, I'm sure you know, going through a bit of an issue with a possible strike looming. If that does happen, how much slack, if any, do you think CN will be able to pick up in terms of the shipment of goods?
I would not comment on their labor relation. We have labor too, and having good labor relation is extremely key to the country and keeping all the supply chain in check. Right now, I mean, the capacity that we have is really by and large spoken for, so we wouldn't be able to be much of a factor to pick up the slack if there was going to be a labor disruption of sort.
So the final question, I know you're in the interim role right now. Do you have any interest in taking the job permanently?
Yes, I have an interest. I'm also a shareholder of the company. I want the board to make the best decision because the decisions are really long term. So I will leave that to the board and their wisdom to decide what to do next.